So, how does Nick Reiner's history of mental health challenges or past struggles with substance use play into what could become the family's most explosive legal battle? It plays a huge role. After Rob Reiner and his wife Michelle passed away, the release of their final will did not bring the closure anyone hoped for. Instead, it detonated a storm of anger, disbelief, and confusion. What was meant to settle the family instead tore open wounds nobody anticipated. Before we dive deeper into this shocking Hollywood family drama, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications for more jaw-dropping stories from the world of fame, fortune, and secrets. Only here on Jawwad Vlogz. At the center of it all was a twist that stunned Hollywood. Nick Reiner, long considered the most unpredictable member of the family, had been named the largest beneficiary, an inheritance estimated near $200 million. Sources suggest Rob and Michelle's decision was driven by concern for Nick's ability to function independently, but for outsiders, it only raised eyebrows. California law adds another layer of complexity. Anyone found responsible for harming a parent is generally barred from inheriting under the so-called Slayer statute. But Nick's formal mental health diagnosis created a gray area. Some legal analysts suggested that mental incompetence could complicate whether the law even applied. Suddenly, questions nobody wanted to ask became unavoidable. Did Nick know the contents of the will? And if so, could that knowledge have influenced his behavior in ways no one foresaw? Meanwhile, the rest of the family didn't stay silent. Romy and Jake moved fast, hiring attorneys and filing challenges to Nick's share. They also questioned the portion left to Tracy, the adopted daughter, arguing about the structure and fairness of the estate itself. What followed was a full-scale family rupture. Words Rob had once spoken to friends echoed painfully. "My children are my lifeblood. I've never loved anyone more." Now, his children were facing off in a bitter legal war fueled by money and resentment. Then came the moment that froze Hollywood. On December 14, 2025, authorities arrived at Rob's Brentwood home, and news spread within hours that Nick had been taken into custody in connection to events inside the property. Headlines swarmed with one urgent question: who would inherit the massive estate if Nick was removed? The answer wasn't simple. California's Slayer statute doesn't require a criminal conviction. It can be enforced in civil court if there's a 50% probability someone intentionally caused harm. This low threshold shocked the public, but the real twist came from a legal loophole. The statute only applies if intent can be clearly proven. Nick's team argued that if he wasn't mentally competent, the law wouldn't block his inheritance. Suddenly, the door to his $140 million share, including copyrights to legendary films, royalties, and the family Brentwood home, could swing wide open. The story of the Reiner family had shifted from tragedy to a legal thriller. What followed next would test love, loyalty, and the limits of compassion like never before. Once the contents of Rob Reiner's will leaked, the public reaction was instantaneous. Grief turned into outrage, disbelief, and debate overnight. The will, reportedly written about 2 years before Rob and Michelle's passing, revealed a decision nobody saw coming. The biggest shock: roughly 70% of Rob's $200 million fortune, around $140 million, was left to Nick Reiner, including full ownership of film rights for classics like When Harry Met Sally, The Princess Bride, and A Few Good Men, along with ongoing royalties tied to Seinfeld. On top of that, Nick inherited the family's primary Brentwood estate, a New England-style home valued at $13 million, the very place where tragedy had struck. Some friends and insiders speculated Rob's choice stemmed from fear that time was running out to ensure Nick's security. Others saw it as unwavering, perhaps blind, parental devotion. Either way, the decision was more than a financial plan. It was a deeply emotional act, a final effort to protect the son who had struggled most. The remaining estate was divided unevenly. About 20% went to Tracy Reiner, the adopted daughter, while Jake and Romy each received roughly 10%. This imbalance reopened old wounds and sparked intense resentment. The will also included a handwritten note from Rob. "I have always believed that each child has their own path. But Nick will need the opportunities I can give him." Those words, intended to explain his reasoning, instead fanned the flames. They painted the picture of a father acting out of fear and love, a parent desperate to provide for a child he worried might never thrive alone. For years, Rob and Michelle had supported Nick through chaos, failed recovery attempts, and stalled careers. Friends described Rob's greatest fears not losing money, but losing his son entirely. This inheritance, Rob believed, was a chance for Nick to rebuild his life, a protective act born of desperation rather than favoritism. Yet, to the rest of the family, it looked like betrayal. Romy and Jake were blindsided. When they received notice of the allocations, their shock quickly turned to fury. Jake, who was in Houston at the time, immediately booked the earliest flight to Los Angeles. Upon arrival, he went straight to Lyons & Associates, the family's long-trusted law firm. With fury and determination, he demanded legal action to challenge Nick's share. "This is about fairness," he told the attorneys. "Nick took everything from us, we fight back." Romy, reading the same documents, was equally outraged. Why would Dad do this? Nick already ruined everything, she said through tears. Even Tracy, the eldest, realized the fight might threaten her 20% share and quickly hired her own legal team, including veteran attorney David O. Carter. She was determined not to let her portion be challenged. Suddenly, a private family matter had transformed into a high-stakes, three-way legal battle pitting sibling against sibling, love against law, and legacy against personal grief. Social media and headlines exploded. Public opinion split instantly. Some sided with Jake and Romy, seeing them as protecting their parents' legacy. Others defended Tracy, noting her consistent support for Rob and Michelle during years of family stress. The Reiners' story had become a cautionary tale. What began as devotion and protection had become division and conflict. With the question hanging over everyone, could love survive under the weight of money, loss, and suspicion? As the Reiner family feud escalated, all attention turned to Nick. Despite facing the most serious legal challenges imaginable, he appeared calm, almost calculated. Reporters and the public watched in disbelief as he moved swiftly, securing Alan Jackson, one of Los Angeles' most formidable defense attorneys, known for representing Hollywood's biggest names. With fees reportedly surpassing $2,000 per hour, many wondered how could someone with a long history of instability and no steady income afford this kind of legal powerhouse. Sources say Nick's strategy is deliberate and aggressive, centering on mental health not just as a shield against criminal responsibility, but as a key to protecting his inheritance. If his legal team can establish that he was mentally incompetent at the time of the incident, it could undermine the Slayer statute entirely. In that scenario, Nick could still legally claim his 70% share of the estate, worth around $140 million. Film rights, ongoing royalties, and the Brentwood mansion included. This dual strategy, protecting both freedom and fortune, stunned observers. Some insiders suggest it wasn't improvised. Nick may have understood the law well enough to anticipate this outcome, using his mental health status as a calculated shield to safeguard his inheritance. Early payments traced to assets under his control hint at preemptive planning, fueling speculation that this was more than desperation. It may have been a carefully orchestrated legal maneuver. Public reaction was immediate and intense. Headlines ran wild with debates about whether mental illness should be used to defend someone so deeply entangled in both a tragic event and a multi-million-dollar inheritance. Psychologists and legal experts weighed in, divided over where compassion ends and accountability begins. Some described Nick as profoundly damaged but dangerously calculating. Others believed his actions were too structured to dismiss as purely symptomatic of illness. The line between vulnerability and manipulation blurred completely. Meanwhile, Jake and Romy were not standing down. They partnered with veteran estate lawyer Mark Jericho to freeze Nick's inheritance, arguing that the will failed to account for his alleged involvement in the tragedy. Documents flooded the courts, strategy sessions ran late into the night, and reporters camped outside Los Angeles courthouses, waiting for every twist. Then came another complication: Tracy Reiner. She realized that challenging Nick's share could also threaten her 20% allocation. Rather than sitting quietly, she hired her own legal team and prepared to defend her inheritance aggressively. Now, the private feud had become a three-way legal war, with alliances shifting and every decision carrying emotional and financial consequences. Behind the public drama, one truth remained painfully clear: Rob Reiner's intention, to protect his son Nick above all else, was colliding with the harsh realities of law, family, and public scrutiny. Love, devotion, and legal strategy had become intertwined, and nobody could predict how far this storm would go. The leak of Rob Reiner's will sent shockwaves through the family and the public. Jake and Romy were outraged, seeing Nick's 70% share as unfair, while Tracy immediately defended her 20%, turning a private dispute into a full-blown legal war. Social media exploded. Some sided with Jake and Romy, others with Tracy, but all were stunned by the scale of the estate and the family tension. The handwritten note Rob left for Nick, meant as protection, fueled resentment instead. Friends say Rob's love for Nick motivated the decision, but the public saw favoritism. The Brentwood mansion, film rights, and royalties became symbols of a family divided. Hollywood watched as love, money, and loyalty collided, showing how even the closest families can fracture under grief and wealth.